Hello there. Right now I'm talking to you from Portland, Oregon, but in 2 months' time I will be on the Pacific Crest Trail, hiking 2,660 miles from Mexico to Canada. My name is Ratatouille, and you're listening to Trailside Radio.
I read the books, I read the blogs, I kind of saw the gear list, but it's like at the end of it, I was not expecting such a profound difficulty coming back.
Really the first trip I did without adults was when I took you and your brother when you were 6 and he was 3, and I took 3 teenagers who'd never been camping, and we went up into the Boundary Waters for a few days.
It was really part of my PCT dream to sort of have these pile-ups in hotel rooms where there's, 7, 8 hikers in a hotel room and it stinks and you're eating dinner together and it's just a lot of fun.
Hello again. Welcome listeners to Trailside Radio, my new podcast documenting my upcoming attempt to thru hike the Pacific Crest Trail. I have absolutely no podcasting experience, so this should get interesting quickly. Just a little background about me. My name is Daniel Hepokoski. I'm 36 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon. Grew up in Minnesota. I've been a musician most of my life. Worked in natural foods for years. I love to cook, as my trail name Ratatouille may suggest. I picked up that name last year while I was doing a 300-mile solo hike in Washington State, mostly along the PCT. That was the hike that convinced me that I wanted to try to hike the entire trail. When I told my friends and family about my plan, many of them asked if I was going to keep a blog. My last couple section hikes, I've kept journals and shared them online with friends. I thought right away it would be fun to keep a blog, but I decided I would do it in an audio form rather than a written form. And after a little while, that idea evolved into doing a full-blown podcast with guests and segments and even a theme song. So this podcast won't just be a report of how many miles I hike each day, but a slice of trail life, sounds from the trail, and stories from the hikers and other people I meet along the way. Please bear with me at first. I'm still learning the technical side of things. This episode is my first attempt at editing audio with a smartphone, which is how I'll be producing episodes during my hike. Right now, I'm talking to you through the brand new audio recorder I'll be taking on the trail. But the interviews you'll hear in a little bit were recorded using a variety of equipment, and the results are mixed. This is all a crash course for me, so the sound should get better as we go. I hope to release an episode every other week until my hike starts in late April, when this will become a weekly thing. My first backpacking attempt occurred when I was 20 years old. I had recently moved to the West Coast, and I had wilderness experience, but for me that usually involved a canoe. So I was not used to the idea of carrying everything I needed on my back at one time. I borrowed a heavy external frame backpack from my roommate and filled it with everything I thought I'd need. I actually had pots and pans hanging off the side of the pack. Looking back now, it was completely laughable. My plan was to hike the Timberline Trail around Mount Hood, which overlaps the PCT for a few miles, but it did not go as planned. I took a bus to the town of Government Camp, hiked up the mountain from there. By the time I even reached the Timberline Trail a few miles uphill, I was throwing up from exhaustion and altitude sickness. Camped that night by Timberline Lodge and headed west the next morning. It took me about 2 miles to realize I wasn't going to make it around the mountain in the time that I had given myself, that I was going to have to turn around and go back the way I came. So That second night, I hiked a few miles further, and that second night became my first experience camping on the PCT. I found a spot by the trail to set up my tent, which was probably the only piece of gear that I had that was suitable for what I was doing. And after sunset, just as I was falling asleep, another hiker came walking up and asked if there was room for him to camp, and I pointed out a spot where there was room for another tent, but he didn't have a tent. He just laid down his bedroll and took off his small backpack and laid down, and after a little bit he asked me where I had come from that day, and I was a little embarrassed because I had only done maybe 4 or 5 miles, but I told him Timberline Lodge, and he nodded, and I asked him where he had come from that day, and he named a place I had never heard of. And after a pause, he said to me, "You don't know where that is, do you?" And I admitted I didn't, and he said, 42 miles from here. And I was totally stunned and amazed. I honestly didn't know if I should even believe him at that point. I do now because I've met people who can do 50 miles in the mountains in a day. But at the time, I really couldn't imagine it. I never got his name. Never found out for sure if he was through hiking or section hiking. But still, that night there was a seed that was planted in my brain, which has almost 17 years later grown into a desire to hike 2,600 miles myself. I did go back later that summer with appropriate gear and hiked the entire Timberline Trail, which led to many other hikes over the years, which gradually got longer and longer. But none of those adventures compares to the challenge of through hiking the PCT. For this first episode, I decided to talk to a couple of people who have already accomplished this feat. You're going to hear from Paul Burdick and John Brennan about their experiences hiking the trail, as well as readjusting to their lives after finishing their through hikes. First, let's listen to my conversation with Paul Burdick, PCT class of 2013. Hi, Paul.
Hello.
Trail name Blur.
Yes.
Now, am I correct? It was 2013 that you through hiked the PCT?
Yep.
What time did you start? What time of year did you start your hike?
We started on April 23rd.
Was there snow in the Sierra when you got there?
There was still snow in the Sierra, much less than we expected. There's a site called pulstoler.com, which kind of tells you the snow levels in the Sierras, and it also kind of recommends a date that you leave Kennedy Meadows, which is the unofficial entrance to the Sierras for the PCT. And, typically it's around June 6th, so that's what we were aiming for, because it takes approximately, I think, 6 weeks to pretty much get to Kennedy Meadows from the start of the trail with average speed and whatnot. The last time I looked at Postoler, I'm pretty sure it was like mid-May was when they were recommending that you enter the Sierras, because the snow is almost non-existent.
Mm-hmm. No, it's certainly subject to change,
yeah.
But it's a little frightening.
It was far less snow than I was, and it's the Sierras. You expect, you're going over passes at 10,000 feet, and it's like you're expecting snow, and it's like, that's it? That's that little patch?
So when you set off, you were on your own, or you were with a friend or a group of people?
My friend Amelia and I started at the same time. We actually went to a Trail Angels Scout in Frodo, and we started off with a group of people, Mark and Ashley, Cuddles, Fun Size, Goodall was my friend Amelia, Blur, Matt, and number 2. And interestingly enough, all of us finished.
Wow.
All of us who started that day from Scout and Frodo's at the Mexican border finished. And it's like the success rate for the trail is roughly 40%. So like we were all blown. We met up again twice after that, once in Big Bear and another time in Kennedy Meadows just for food. And it's just like, we're all still here. We've all made it this far.
Were all of the people in that group first timers?
Cuddles, who had done it before, but he had skipped portions of it because of forest fires, which is pretty typical right now. Absolutely. So yeah, he decided to do it over and, from end to end, opposed to just redoing the sections he missed.
Mm-hmm. Were there any parts of your through hike when you regretted being out there or had serious doubts about being out there?
Yes. There was 2 points where I think I was pretty close to quitting. Right before Tehachapi, I was at a place called Hiker Heaven, and I had soaked my feet. And the next day I headed out, and my feet just went to crap. I mean, I got like 3 blisters all over them. And then it was boiling hot. I was stressed. The water situation was horrible. And it's just like, when your feet are bad, the feet are the most important part. I mean, ankles, knees, arm, you can pretty much do it without arms. But it's like, if your feet get ruined, it is excruciating every single mile, as you can imagine. But I thankfully had friends who were staying near Tehachapi, and I took 2 days off. And it's just like, my feet didn't perfectly recover, but it's just like, getting there was so painful. And I crossed the Mojave on those feet, and I lost a pair of socks that morning of. And it's just like, that's just like, you just get to the point where it's like, why am I doing this? It's so painful. What am I really getting out of it? And that was early on. Mm-hmm. So it was like, I made it through that. And then it's like the Sierras kind of rejuvenate you. It's just like a different experience from the desert. But then Northern California, with all the forest fires, was burnt out. And we actually had a string of like 7-8 days of 100+ degree temperatures. You're exposed because there's no trees. And then I got another blister. And then my phone got stolen with basically all my photos and videos. So it was like, I had actually stopped into town like a week beforehand and had a backup made because I just had connection to wireless, because thank God for Apple for having the automatic backups for your phones. Otherwise, I probably would have lost all my photos, all my videos of the trip. And it's just like, that blow would have finished me. Because a lot of your moral, psychological support is from like sharing, like this podcast, friends, communication is like, human connection is very important for making sure we survive difficult situations. And losing that phone and no longer being able to like show photos or videos or even remember the good parts of the trip, the Sierras and whatnot, it's like that would have been such a psychological toll that it would have pretty much ended my through hike. Thankfully, we were near a town. We tried to track the phone, nothing. But I got a new phone for it's amazing how kind people will be when they see that you are at your wit's end. It's just like, there was a woman who was in charge of the AT&T store in Shasta, and she just looked at my face and just knew she had to help me. And she got me a new phone that she was supposed to give to her son. I bought it. All my photos just magically appeared thanks to the Apple backup. And it's just like, I was back. But it's like for 1 hour, I was just like done. It's like, this trail has beaten me and I'm done. We were coming down near Truckee in California. There's a road that you cross and there's a ski resort right there. And it's like, according to Yogi's guidebook, he's like, they had breakfast. We're coming down the trail like, we're going to have breakfast. We're going to have breakfast. It's going to be the best thing ever. Someone meets us on the way up. Oh no, the restaurant's closed. That last mile was probably harder than the 15 before. It's like the hopes have been dashed. The emotions are sad.
You need those short-term rewards.
Oh, you really do.
To keep it going.
What I really do, some of my favorite memories is running into people that you haven't seen, and fellow hikers that I haven't seen in a while. It's like, there was two friends called the Andrews, and it's like I had seen them in the Sierras, but because of the way that our schedules work, you can be within a day of someone. It's just like based on your speeds and town breaks, you may never see them. I ran into them after Ashland after 1,000 miles, and it's like, where have you? It was just like a homecoming. It's like, where have you guys been? We missed each other. And it was like, great. And I also ran into Hermes and Lotus in Oregon. It's like, I thought they were days ahead of me. And it's just like, Blur, is that you? They shot across the lake. And it's just like, who is that? Hermes and Lotus. I'm coming right over. It's like, it's just like it's band of brothers, but band of hikers. It's like you're sharing this incredible journey, at least in part, with, same experiences. Like, the poo jokes really don't get that old. The obsession with the different kinds of foods really is like, yeah, I'm thinking the same things. And then it's like, oh yeah, did you get caught in that snowstorm? No, we got rain the entire time. How about that sun? And like, no, we didn't see any sun. It's like, it is a band of hikers, and it's like meeting them again. It's like, bros, band, whatever you want to call it. It's like seeing them again. We stopped at a Stehekin, which is in Washington near a bakery, and it's just like, we ran into people. It's like we just hung out in town, have beers, really good food, take showers. And it's like, that makes it, it's like, it's a shared experience. And it's like, people outside of the trail really don't understand. Like, section hiking is just like, you kind of create that, it changes you. And you have these friends who are being changed at the same time and have very similar experiences that your civilized friends don't have. And they don't quite understand. Like, they understand, but they don't really feel it the way you do.
What would be your most important piece of advice you would offer to someone getting ready for their first through hike?
To say prepare is hard too, because unless you've done it before, like walking 20, 25 miles a day, it's hard to prepare for that. I mean, unless you've done it before. But I would say expectations are the most important part. If you go out there expecting to have like a life-changing experience and, find inspiration, you might find it. You shouldn't be disappointed if you don't. Because a lot of your trails, like people all that time to think, you're obviously thinking through problems. Like, no, you're actually just, step by step, day by day, which is a great part of life, and it does sometimes help bring clarity, but it's hard. It's like, the PCT is hard. It will change you. You will come back a different person and will not quite fit in. And I think there's a certain expectation that people don't have about that it's like, it caught me off guard. It's like, I read the books, I read the blogs, I kind of saw the gear list, but it's like, at the end of it, I was not expecting such a profound difficulty coming back with such a, I don't know, I was 34 when I did it. It's like, I felt I was pretty much an adult. I knew who I was as a person. I came back like society, being in civilization hurt. And it's like, it was a different experience for me. One of those really, I don't want to say profound, but it's like, it was an experience I was not expecting that still influences me today. Mm-hmm. So it's like, expectations are important, both on the trail and afterwards. Mm-hmm.
Do you mind if I ask you a little bit more about that?
Sure.
About the reintegrating into society? Was there, what was the toughest part of that for you?
Let's see. Noise is a big thing for me. It's like, I'm a naturally quiet person. I just walk around quietly. And then in the woods, it's like, you have nature, but you don't have trucks. You don't have people shouting in the street. And I came back from the trail, and a month and a half later, I moved back to Portland, and it's just like, socializing and all that noise and all that communication and all that overload of sensory experience was the difficult part. I'm naturally an introvert. It's really hard to say extroverts go out and do a trail. I mean, it's typically someone who's slightly more introspective and is kind of wants that nature experience. So when you come back and it's just like, you're just overloaded with this, it's like, you just want to hide. And I had to go to the office, and then I would be there for 8 hours, and it's like, I would come home, not talk to anyone. And it's just like, until the next morning when I had to go to work. And it took months for me to kind of get out of that. Friends wanted to socialize since I was back in Portland, and I'm like, I just can't. I need quiet. I need to be alone. I just need that calm period. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is something that I haven't looked too much into, but the integration part's hard, to the point there have been people who have committed suicide when they've come back from the trail because maybe they didn't fit in very well before. They come back and it's even harder. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, the trail requires money and time, and sometimes they can't go back, and they just can't reintegrate this. And I feel like the term PTSD is thrown around a lot in society. Like, I had this stressful experience. I'm obviously suffering from PTSD, and I don't think it even remotely compares to what our people in the military go through. But with that low level of stress for 5 months, where it's like food and water and heat and cold and worrying about rattlesnakes and possibly bears, and it's a low level stress. You come back and there's a little bit of PTSD stress. Mm-hmm. It's like, you see it. It's just like, you're trying to close yourself off, protect yourself a little bit, and there's depression. There's been some people who've committed suicide after it. So there's a psychological toll, and it's like, I feel like people should be prepared for that. Mm-hmm. Awesome. One last thing is like, yeah, there are people who do the trail with a partner, and that will make or break you. Mm-hmm. If you are in a relationship before you start the trail, that's another area where, there will be being that communication. It's like, I don't know of a single person who started the trail with a relationship and ended it within a few months after the trail still had a relationship, because it is, again, there is a change. Mm-hmm. And it's like, they have an experience. They may not understand why you do not experience the civilization the same way. Mm-hmm. For me as a professional, like, I'm a VP of engineering / CTOs. Like, I build large web applications and platforms and whatnot. And it's just like, a lot of thru hikers actually take part-time, seasonal work so they can go back hiking. And I might have actually made a horrible mistake by jumping right back in the full-time work in a city by, I wasn't ready. I didn't have a good acclimation period back to the noise, the people, the socialization. And it's like,
you jumped right back into your career.
Right, I did. Mm-hmm. Which is just like, it was a big splash of water. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What was the biggest sacrifice you had to make to do your thru hike of the PCT?
As far as like an individual thing, like an individual specific item, it's kind of hard to choose just one. I mean, you're obviously going out without showers. Your beard gets horribly, so you're like, you're not grooming really. I mean, you're not in contact with your friends, your family. You're obviously not making any money. So it's like you come back and it's like you have to get a job to pay for, if you have over expenses for your thing. But like every single adventure has some kind of sacrifice. And I feel like the PCT as a whole is like, it sacrifices things from so many areas. It's like, it's a time sacrifice. The average through hike is a little bit over 5 months. It's a psychological sacrifice. It's like you're changing how your body's reacting, not just to stress, but also like civilization. It's a physical sacrifice. There are things that now pop in my feet that never popped before. And it's just like after the first 2 weeks, one of the biggest reasons for stopping is, you get injured. Stress fractures are extremely complicated, common, rolled ankles, or just sheer mental exhaustion. So I think the biggest sacrifice I really had to make was just like taking a break from that life and then coming back to it. I think it was pretty much the all around sacrifice. It's just like I changed, I lost time, I lost money, I don't fit in anymore. And it's just like, it's not sacrificed as one individual item. It's like, yeah, of course I miss showers, but now I've come back and it's just like, you've sacrificed a little bit of yourself to get something back out of the experience. And that's adventure.
Now, for listeners who want to check out your blog, how can they find your blog?
My blog is shapelesschaos.com. I started it again. I had a blog years ago, and I started this one specifically for the trail. It has, gear reviews, what I started with the trail with, what I ended with, what I felt about the pluses and minuses. It also has a few entries about how I kind of came back to society and constantly was questioning, like, why am I here? And then it has like slightly more modern things where I kind of like, I make, make little jokes at my expense of my work because, you have to relieve stress. I had a Flickr account where I had all my photos, about 250, but I kind of took those down. But I made a story out of it. So I've been thinking I need to put that back up because for every photo I had a description of what happened in the days before and after that, just like to help me remember.
Well, thanks for coming and sharing your stories.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me. Good luck on the trail.
Thank you. Growing up, I was a pretty lucky kid in a lot of ways. Some of my best memories from childhood are of going on canoe trips in the Boundary Waters canoe area in northern Minnesota. My mom would take my brother and me up there, often with other friends or family along with us, and we'd paddle and portage from lake to lake for days at a time. And these trips had a lot to do with giving me an appreciation for the wilderness at a young age. But I realized that there's one person who can probably tell those stories even better than I can, and I recently sat down with her. So let's listen to that now. This is my mother, Mary Hepokoski. What were some of your first experiences camping in the wilderness?
Well, I grew up on a small farm with a lot of family, and I was thinking about it, and I didn't get to go camping very much growing up. Really was, I remember going up to the Gunflint one time for maybe one overnight, and my dad going to a summer program, and we were camping in Virginia, Minnesota. It got really cold, and we didn't have good sleeping bags. And then he didn't enjoy the school, so he left. So that was camping in town, in a park. When it really started was, I was a science teacher, and my first teaching experience, my co-teacher next door to me in our basement rooms was very much into wilderness science education. And he and two other science teachers ran a wilderness course for teachers that we could get credit for our school district. And I took the winter course, winter camping, the first year, and loved it, and then did a spring course where half the group would hike one day, the other one canoed, and then we swapped. We took the canoes out and they took the backpacks. So I remember that was really my first backpacking in winter. So basically I learned to be comfortable in the wilderness through taking his class twice. And then as a young teacher, I was an intern teacher. With two of those teachers ran a biology for talented youth during the summer. And I was one of the two women interns, and I did it twice, where we canoed the Mississippi. And 3 weeks on the Mississippi, I learned a lot of outdoor skills. to a point where I was comfortable outdoors by myself
And that
or
was,
leading a trip.
what was the first trip that you did on your own?
First trip I did on my own. Well, I mean, I took and led Peter, my husband, young man who had a lot of outdoor experience. He and I went up camping, and so I wasn't by myself, but I mean, I was the one who did the navigating and the planning and was in charge.
That was the first trip you led.
That was the first trip I led. I've really only done a couple of times by myself. I mean, the first time I ever slept outside by myself was we had all, as a family, gone up to Colorado, and you were pretty young at the time, maybe 6. And Paul, it was a cabin in Evergreen, and I went out in the woods with a sleeping bag. I don't know how far, maybe a quarter mile, half a mile from the cabin, and was sleeping. And I heard these voices, and there were 2 men who were going up the road to bait. There was I don't know if it was a gravel pit or something, but they were going to bait a grizzly in the area with some meat they'd brought up. And I was thinking about whether I should stay there, and I thought, what is the grizzly going to do with me if he's got raw meat up there for himself? And I went back to sleep. But that was my first night outside by myself. And then really the first trip I did without adults was when I took you and your brother when you were 6 and he was 3, and I took 3 teenagers who'd never been camping, and we went up into the Boundary Waters for a few days. And so I paddled a canoe with a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. And then the 3 teenagers paddled another canoe. And I realized later when I started doing solo canoeing that I basically was solo canoeing with 2 kids in my canoe.
Did we make it more difficult for you to canoe?
No, actually, it helps to have, what you do is you want some weight, and so that you don't get blown around in the wind, and so you actually were good ballast.
Sandbags would have been just as good canoeing companions as we were when we were 3 and 6 years old.
Yeah, so I mean, I realized that I'd been, in a sense, solo canoeing and developing those skills. I shouldn't do that because it did help to have you paddle, but I did learn to be strong in terms of paddling. I do remember one of the early, and my father was a fisherman, but he never took. He worked very hard. He was supporting his family, so the few times he went fishing, it was with the guys. The spring fishing trip or the hunting trip. He didn't take us kids along really for much of that, especially us girls. So I didn't really know how to fish, but we were at the put-in place, and it turns out that next door neighbors or neighbors who had kids your age that you knew were there, and he knew some places to fish. And so he taught me a little bit about bass fishing, is where I learned how to bass fish. But he didn't know how to cook them and fillet them. And I taught him how to fillet them and cook them, and he taught me where to find them. So that was really my first experience in learning to fish up there in the Boundary Waters.
Of course, to my eyes as a child, you were the person who showed us how to do all of these things.
It was very hard as a woman to get those skills, to be honest. And I realized that as I got a little later, people being very surprised, being really comfortable. But the first times I went up there, I used to take a paddle into the tent with me. I'd take a knife into the tent. I'd take pans to bang in case a bear came. I mean, it was just really, the safety of small children was my responsibility, but being up there and worried about bears coming and stuff, and I kept and stressed a clean campsite. We didn't leave food lying around, and we hung our stuff in bear bags, and never had any problems with bears. We were fortunate. But now I go up there and I don't even think about bear coming and getting me in my sleeping bag in my tent at night.
In northern Minnesota, in the Boundary Waters canoe area, is the highest concentration of black bears in the world.
Yeah, I only saw bears usually sometimes like driving up on the road. Maybe a bear would cross a road, or I actually have not seen a bear up in the Boundary Waters, which is fine. I did get to see moose a few times, and that was always a thrill. But not every trip, for sure. And saw a lot of loons and birds and a few fish.
The loons are one of my favorite memories. Sound of the loons.
I think it's very interesting that I believe that from when I started going up there, they were very elusive and you could not get close to them. But so in 30 years, so the last few trips I went up there, you do get, just in paddling, they're swimming along and you're paddling, and you get a lot closer because they're not afraid of canoeists anymore, as they were when I first went up there.
You mentioned that it was difficult for you to acquire those wilderness skills as a woman. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that was mostly because of a lack of opportunity, or do you feel that there was active resistance?
I wasn't a Girl Scout. And I guess a lot of people whose parents don't do that with them. I mean, my father worked. We didn't take family vacations, whether they were in the wilderness or not. I mean, there were very few family vacations. Going up to Grandma's for a day was a vacation. My father worked hard. So we just didn't. So if your parent didn't, and if Dad had had more time, he probably would have taught. I mean, he did take my brothers fishing, where he didn't take us girls fishing. So there was some sexism there. And even the girls that I know that were in Girl Scouts did not learn the outdoor skills that boys and Boy Scouts did. They really didn't. They stayed in camps and cabins, although there were some camps, I guess, up in the Boundary Waters. But I know more boys that went into those than I know girls that did that kind of thing. So just the opportunities, lack of opportunities. Or friends that, you meet the guy, co-worker at work, and he says, hey, you want to go fishing? You want to go camping? Well, I've never done it. Well, come on, I know how to do it. You don't meet very many women who say, hey, you want to go up to the Boundary Waters? Or if they do, there aren't many, you had to pick the women who wanted to do it too. And I did find some women.
Sure.
And a good friend that I went canoeing with. So the opportunities to find women, if you didn't have the skills, there weren't a lot of women out there who did, or if they did, they weren't inviting you. You just didn't connect that way. Mm-hmm. So I had the opportunity to serve as a co-leader of a high school trip, or junior high school combination trip. Our group was a neighbor that had been a babysitter for you, was a teacher at school, and she hadn't had experience. She had a lot of outdoor experience, but not in the Boundary Waters, so she knew I had, so she asked me to go. I got the wilderness first aid I needed. It was required by the course, and it was a thrill to know that the young women in our group at the end of a week, they could go up to the Boundary Waters, and they knew how to read a map and put up a tent and portage a canoe and build a fire. And when we came back, and I mentioned that to their moms as we were in the parking lot, I said, they've got the skills. And they were thrilled that their daughters, because they've always wanted to go to the Boundary Waters, and they didn't feel they had the skills. Mm-hmm. To know comfortably reading a map that I can keep track of where I am and know where I am and where I'm going.
So you've been able to witness something of a generational shift to some degree with attitudes?
Yeah. Girls are much more athletic, and I would say there was resistance in the summer institute where I was. The girls, the first year we had, the girls, there were 4 groups. Each teacher was in charge of, I had a girls group, the other woman had a girls group, and the 2 men each had a boys group. And they planned as a unit and did things, and the girls paddled their own canoes all the time. The second year we were a little more concerned about making progress, getting to a destination on the river. So they let the group, so some of the boys paddled some of the girls' canoes, and those girls never developed the skills to either paddle their own canoe, and they spent a lot more time socializing. And the girls that the first year, building their fires, cooking their food, they were very adept and competent. The girls the second year were much less, partly because they were spending a lot more time socializing with boys rather than working on their skills.
So some of the people who might be listening to this are people who are also going to be hiking the Pacific Crest Trail this year. Is there anything that you feel like you should tell them about me, warn them about?
Well, he's an amazing cook. Now he has limitations on the trail of what he has with him, but he does cook well. So if you have the opportunity to eat with him, I would recommend that.
I appreciate your compliment, but I don't think that's what people want to hear. People want to hear the juicy stuff. This will go unedited. Anything you want to say about me?
Daniel is a moody person. And sometimes you just have to recognize that he needs to spend time by himself.
Of the thru hikers that I've met while section hiking the PCT, I've seen a wide variety of personality types. There's a certain amount of stubbornness that is required. There's often a lot of people who just want space away from the social pressures of living in the city.
There's just a sense of wanting to see if one can do something. And I think the PCT, that's a lot of what it's about, is wanting to see if you can do it.
All right. What do you folks think? I think my mom is pretty awesome. I like to think that I'm not as moody as she claims, but she's probably right. While I can do a pretty good imitation of an outgoing person, I'm really an introvert when it comes down to it. There's a reason I choose to do most of my hiking solo. On one hike, I managed to avoid seeing any human beings for 4 full days, and that was glorious. I literally encountered more black bears than people that week. I love being on my own in the wilderness. But after a week or two, I confess that loneliness starts to kick in. For years, I never seriously considered through hiking because I didn't want to hike with a partner or group the whole way, but I also didn't want to be alone for months at a time. In the last couple years, I started to realize that through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail provides the best of both worlds. Many people hike the trail solo, but team up with other hikers for short or long distances. And discovering this part of trail life was a big part of my decision to attempt my own through hike. I talked with my next guest a little bit about the idea of trail community. His name is John Brennan. He hiked the PCT back in 2002 with the trail name Cupcake. He has also hiked most of the Continental Divide Trail, and as you'll hear, he helped create a PCT tradition that continues to this day. I bring you John Brennan, Cupcake, PCT class of 2002. What brought you to the trail? What inspired you to do a thru hike?
I was turning 40 and wasn't feeling that great about my life. I had a good job, I was making good money, but really felt I wanted a big challenge with a big victory. And I'd always been a backpacker, thanks to my dad. And the PCT came early onto the list and stayed at the top. And that all happened right around the turn of the millennium. By the time I figured out that I could do the PCT and that would be my goal, it was too late to get started in 2001 in order to have enough time to plan and do it all. So I hiked in 2002. In 2001, I did a shakedown hike, a long version of the John Muir Trail from Walker Pass to Yosemite Valley. And I timed it to be with the thru hikers. Pretty much wasn't able to stay with anybody because they were doing strong 25-mile days and I was doing weak 20-mile days. But it told me that's what I wanted to do, that I could do it and that I would likely enjoy it. And that's where I actually first discovered the magic of trail community.
Mm-hmm. Did you do your hike alone?
I like to say that gear-wise and food-wise, I was on my own. And if I consider if I slept alone, I wasn't in camp with somebody, there were maybe 10 or 12 nights I slept by myself. Otherwise, I'd run into people right as I was looking for camp. I hiked with someone for 1,500 miles, and she and I camped together. And then by the end, I had a great posse of people, 10 to 15 people who were leapfrogging each other, and it was great.
Most or all of whom were people you met along the way?
Yes. I was out in front of the pack in the Sierra, took 5 days off, which didn't seem to make that much of a difference. By then, I think I was still pretty ahead of the pack. And then in Central Oregon, I took 5 days off and then started meeting people that I didn't see. I met on the first day of the hike or at the kickoff or something, or last saw in the Sierra. So they were people I had a past with that I had a good connection with, and it was great to hike with them. It was really part of my PCT dream to sort of have these pile-ups in hotel rooms where there's, 7, 8 hikers in a hotel room, and it stinks, and you're eating dinner together, and it's just a lot of fun. So Washington was that for me.
It was the camaraderie that you had built by that point made the experience there that much more memorable.
Yeah, and I would almost say that there's some aspect of an instant camaraderie on the trail. You're sharing the basics of food, water, and shelter on a daily basis. You're on a first name basis, and that is something really binding and wonderful about that. Sort of instant friendships, because you have all this stuff in common. You need to find water tomorrow, and if you've got help to find the water, all the better.
How long did you take to finish the trail?
Including my days off, it was 1 day shy of 5 months, and I took about 20 0 days. I had set myself up time-wise to have 6 months off. I wanted to account for injury. I wanted to just give myself enough time so I wasn't having to rush back.
What would be your biggest piece of advice to someone who's getting ready for their first thru hike?
Make sure that you always have enough calories. This is completely incidental observations, but my sense was that people who didn't have enough calories found, it's this body-mind trick that your mind knows that you can get more calories, or maybe even your body, this thing that you can't actually perceive its processes, knows that it's not getting enough calories, and it can get enough calories if you stay in town or if you go back home. But if you have, high calorie, high fat stuff with you on the trail, you're not going to encounter that threat to your hike. So if you're thinking you can do ramen, maybe some people do ramen, but I think having olive oil, like a tablespoon or two with dinner, that kind of stuff is really important.
Did you have a trail name on the Pacific Crest Trail?
Yes. Some friends before the trail gave me the name of Cupcake. And I said, I don't want to be Cupcake. But then I slept on it, and I thought, it's a really good name. At the time, I didn't eat any gluten or dairy, and I've been a long time no sugar, no sweetener kind of guy.
There are a lot of food trail names out there.
Yes.
Food-related trail names.
So the fact that cupcakes were made out of wheat flour, which has gluten, and sugar and dairy, turned that into an irony. The idea that I'd be taking on this big epic hike and yet have this silly name like Cupcake also really appealed to me. And then the last part was that it became an easy way for me to come out. I could still talk about my trail name and come out if I wanted to, or not come out if some guy had picked me up in a pickup truck and asked me about it. I could just leave it off.
How did people on the trail that you met along the way react? Did that affect your experience at all?
Sure. Coming out on the trail was an interesting experience. It was important for me at the time to be visible. Again, because you're sharing food, shelter, water, and you just know somebody's trail name, there's this instant intimacy. And yet, the fact that I'm gay may or may not come out. And it bugged me that there would be this automatic assumption of heterosexuality. That's sort of what I was fighting in coming out. It's like, gay people do lots of things, and they're lots of different things, and they're not what you see on TV. So that's why it was important to come out. Mostly it was just a non-issue. I was hiking with some guys, and we were talking over dinner, and they're like, ooh, it makes me kind of feel weird in my stomach. But, they weren't being hostile towards me. They were just being honest. And I continued to hike with them, so it wasn't a big deal. Didn't get me laid.
Straight people come out as straight all the time and take it for granted.
I guess that's true. I mean, maybe I don't even think about that or notice it, but it's true, right?
Yeah.
And to my knowledge, I'm not claiming any special award here, but I think I'm the first person who hiked who was out. I had strangers contacting me afterwards or while I was hiking saying, man, I did it 2 years ago or 5 years ago and I could have never come out, and great for you. And, maybe a couple of people afterwards asking me if I had any issues because they were going to hike and be out. But to my knowledge, I'm the first one who had a journal and was out from the start. And the only time on the trail that it really became important was when I was approaching Mount Baden-Powell. And Baden-Powell is in Southern California. It's named after the founder of the Boy Scouts. And even, whatever it is, 13 years later, the Boy Scouts still have ongoing issues with gay people being involved. And the Boy Scouts were important to me while I was growing up. And I don't think there's any basis for the discrimination. So 2002, approaching Baden-Powell, wanting to be out, I took a sticker and put it in the center of my chest and wrote with my Sharpie, always hike with a Sharpie, PCT fag. It was a little in your face, but it was short and sweet and easy to read. And I had a sticker that was small, so I needed something concise. And it... as I was switchbacking up Baden-Powell, there were some Boy Scouts I was gaining on, and they saw the sticker and they were sort of giggly about it, but they asked a really sincere question. They're like, "What's it say on your shirt?" And I said, "PCT fag." And there were a couple of clear switchbacks up, and they said, "What's that mean?" And I just explained my story that Baden-Powell is about the Boy Scouts, and I am gay now, and I was a Boy Scout, and I'm hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, and blah, blah, blah. So it was a good discussion. I ran into the troop and the troop leader up above, and he said the boys had talked to him and that they'd had a discussion about it. So the purpose of wearing the sign had really been met, that it generated some discussion about Boy Scout policies, and also hopefully dispelled some myths about gay people, gay men.
How was your readjustment to society after you finished the trail?
Readjusting after the trail was harder than I thought. People said to stay fit, to keep on exercising, and I wanted to do nothing but be still and inside, just sitting on a couch, not doing anything. I'd gotten depressed at some point on the trail or just as I finished, and it took me a while to figure that out, and I think that was some of the wanting to be still and inside. But I also noticed while I was doing that I had that feeling most people might better relate to, of once you've been on a boat or a ship and then getting on still land, you sort of still have this sensory memory of moving. I definitely had that afterwards, where for 2 or 3 weeks, I could tell that I was still because I wasn't in this rhythm. There was this sort of moving from having walked so much. I made friends that I'm regularly in touch with in the Pacific Crest Trail. It was a life-changing experience, and there was no aha moment, but it was something I don't regret. It's something that positively changed my life. And I still give people the advice that it will ruin you. Hiking the PCT will ruin you, to come back to a day-to-day life. I would, one of the things I say is that if I ever won the lottery, I would hike until the money ran out.
So correct me if I'm wrong. One of your other great claims to fame in the PCT community is that you designed the bandanas?
Yes. Yogi Gottago and I wanted to give a gift from the class of 2002 to the class of 2003. And arrived on this idea of bandanas and brainstormed it a little bit. And Yogi had some great ideas, and Gottago had some great ideas, and I sort of felt happy to be along for the ride. And maybe I'd heard about custom bandanas. Maybe, we all contributed to the conversation. And so Yogi does the data, and Gotta Go does a lot of the coordination and handing them out, getting to the right place, because she lives in Southern California. And then I came up with the original design and make all the changes every year. The color, get a new original for the printer. But what was really great that we discovered about the bandanas on the first year, because both Yogi, all three of us, Yogi, Gotta Go, and I were on the PCT at some point. Yogi, I think, was doing another through hike. Maybe Gotta Go was doing another through hike. I just got on for a long section, the Sierra again, to join them. Is that people were actually using the trail miles. Like, they were just having dinner and they'd look at their bandana rather than their book and say, okay, this next town, Mojave, is, let's see, if we're here, Mojave's 75 miles. If we do 325 so we can get there. And using it as well as being practical as a bandana and a memento from their trip, it was a practical piece of their trail navigation. And I was really happy to hear that was happening.
I would really like to thank you for coming over here to the studio. This has really been really great talking with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks again, John Brennan, Cupcake, PCT 2002. This is Trailside Radio. And that's just about going to wrap things up for the very first episode of Trailside Radio. But I can't leave you quite yet until I've shared this with you. If there was something that you wanted to talk about in there, that something you missed, any last minute, you can always edit back in something if there's something you want to add.
Sure. Yeah. The only thing I would say is, and it's not really related at all, other than probably hiking the PCT gave me the kahunas to do it, but I don't know if you remember in 2012, there was a guy who took his clothes off at Portland Airport to protest the TSA.
Okay, I do remember that.
That was me.
Oh, wow.
My other claim to fame.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. I definitely remember reading that.
So I don't know if you want to, it's an entirely separate chapter of my life and has had a huge impact that, but, I'm about to go into a fundraising campaign. So there are criminal charges, which I was quickly acquitted. It's perfectly legal to be naked in Portland and as a form of free speech, whether it's a protest or an artistic expression. It's been upheld by case law, so the officers at the airport should have known that and not arrested me. I was arrested anyway, quickly acquitted on the criminal charges, and now, almost 3 years later, am still involved in a process with the TSA with civil charges. They levied a $1,000 fine and have gone through 3 internal processes, all of which, and I'm learning the law as I go in this, is an administrative process, which means that the Constitution isn't allowed to be considered in their decision. So I'm about to begin a fundraising campaign to raise the money to go to the Ninth Circuit Court, in which these administrative laws that say you have to do what we say can be evaluated against my constitutional right for free speech and protected speech, free speech, and protest. And so in some ways, even though it's 3 years after my protest, it's the most important part of my protest. So after again, nearly 3 years, I'm coming up to another exciting part of this, again, life-changing thing that I did sort of spur of the moment.
If listeners want to find out more about that, is there a place they can go online or look into?
One of the attorneys who wrote about my case when it happened in April of 2012 referred to me as the Naked American Hero. And I wrote him and said, can I use that? So I got nakedamericanhero.com. And if people want to find out more, right now it redirects to my Facebook page, and I'm going to create a little site that is going to be the fundraising site. So that's up, and people can go there if they want to find out more.
And that's really going to do it for this first episode of Trailside Radio. I hope you enjoyed it. You can let me know what you think of it at trailsideradio.com, or find the show on Facebook and Twitter at Trailside Radio. In the next episode, I'll talk a little bit about the preparations I'm making for my hike. Debut a segment about trail food and we'll hopefully hear from another guest or two. Again, episodes will be released every other week until my hike starts in April, when it will become a weekly thing. I'd like to thank my guests, Paul and John, and my mother Mary. I'd like to thank Ariana for providing recording assistance, and Nicholas Austin Skinner for the theme song you hear in the background. And thanks as well to all of you out there listening to this. A special shout out to the class of 2015. I'll see you all out on the trail. All right, everybody. I've got a dehydrator full of quinoa to tend to. This is Trailside Radio. Over and out.